Hey guys, today's episode of Sports Spectrum Podcast is presented all week by our friends at Unitas. Go check them out at weareunitas.com. When you check out the apparel, the sneakers, all the great things they have on the website, when you complete your purchase, use the code SS10, SS10, and save 10% off with weareunitas.com.
What's up, Sports Spectrum? We're here with Ryan Leaf here on Radio Row down at the Super Bowl. And, man, how are you doing? It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you, too. I always love this week just seeing, our NFL brothers. When we play against each other, we don't get a chance to really talk. And then post-career, we're trying to figure everything out transition-wise. And so it's really great to have like this week, see what everybody's up to, and hear about your families and everything you're doing. That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned transition, too. I've been through that process now after 10 years in the league. And you were the second pick of the draft in 98, I believe, right? And, I guess talk about that transition out of the league, because I know people know your name is synonymous with, being highly touted and being drafted high, and then things not working out in the way that you would have wanted them to as well. But I guess walk us through the mindset of that and I guess the hardships that you went through.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I probably could have been a backup for a lot of years. When I finally, my ego wouldn't let me be that. You've been the starting quarterback your whole life. All of a sudden, you're a backup. I I remember walking into Mike Holmgren's office in my last stop in Seattle and just said, I quit. Can't imagine wanting to quit something that I wanted to do since I was like 4 years old, selfish on my part. But I was also just kind of really, sick and tired of being beat up. Not only physically, but like emotionally, like you talked about. There's a lot of expectation with being the second pick in the NFL draft. And, I'm synonymous with like failure of that, especially with Peyton Manning being the guy that was drafted just ahead of me, and he's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. And so the crash and burn of all that, I didn't know how to deal with in a healthy way. And so the transition is already difficult as it is. The identity of you as a football player, now what are you? That's what you are to everybody. So now not only was my identity of a football player gone, like I had a new one, like this failed football player. And I did not know how to deal with that. And I didn't understand that you could ask for help and seek therapy. And I thought that is weakness type of thing. I'd never seen another man do that, or a peer of mine. So, I tried to deal with it myself, and that ended up being the only thing that ever numbed me, and that was it was painkillers. I mean, it's the only drug I've ever taken in my life after surgeries and everything like that, and it absolutely ruined it for me. I disappeared in it. I was a slave to it. And it took every bit of my life over the next 8 years, so much so that I had to end up being a criminal and going to prison for 3 years, which is crazy to think. And so I was that story, and when I walked out, either I had to make a conscious choice to start over and have a different ending, or it was just going to be the same. And so that's what I did. And luckily, I've had amazing people help carry me through it the last 10 and a half years that I've been out.
Yeah, I love the redemption and the story of that, because it's a hard thing. I mean, no one teaches you about transition and how to do that, and
the league doesn't do anything. They just kind of don't let the door hit you.
Exactly. And people see the facade version of it, like there's so many resources available for you, but nobody's going to take you.
There's like 80 different programs. There's a union, there's a Legends, there's a player care. I mean, there's just so many, and no one wants to work together, and you're confused. And a lot of guys, especially when I started working with former players, a lot of guys don't fully understand that. They think that is almost like welfare. I'm like, no, you earned this, man. Yeah, this is for you, and you may think that by you accepting it or taking it is like some sort of, failures. It's not. You've earned this. This is what you get for it, and so. It's really hard to find that space.
I remember signing up for line of duty, and I had been relatively pretty healthy as far as major injuries when it came to playing in the NFL. I didn't have like ACL or Achilles or like broken bones or something, but almost felt like, should I do it? But it is like, you look back at your stack of medical records and they're like giant. And I still have pains that I go through.
And the fact that they stop paying your health insurance after 5 years.
That's right.
Like, that's really when your body starts to break down from all the things that you went through, And then sure enough, you're like, I'd love to keep this Cobra, insurance, but it's so damn expensive.
Exactly.
And so you have to go find your new way, and it is what it is. We loved getting to do what we got to do, and what's important is that we're responsible for one another. Like, you're my brother. There's only 27,000 of us ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to be responsible for one another. We're going to be the ones that show up for one another when the league doesn't, when the union doesn't, but we are. And that's important because there's not a lot of people like us that got to experience what we got to experience.
Yeah, and that's important. You said it on the head. We show up for each other. That brings us to what you're doing now. And talk about what you're doing now. Like, how do you invest in the current or even former guys that may be struggling in some of the things that you did, or maybe they just don't know. They're in that kind of, gray area.
Well, I tried to, the NFL, shame on me. They fooled me a couple times. The Legends community, it's run by the league. And so it's more of a propaganda machine. And I thought I was doing some good with it, but all they still really care about is the shield. And if you are anything that speaks negatively or tarnishes it in any way, they're gonna throw you to the side. So when Vincent Jackson died, that's the thing that tilted me over the edge, where he was alone in a hotel room dying, and the people at the league office knew it, and they didn't do anything about it. And if I'd have known it, I could have went down there and knocked on the door, and I could have looked him in the eye and said, I've been right where you've been. I've been in a hotel room dying. And he would listen to me, and maybe he's still here. And so there's a lot to that. And so I started working with an organization called the Menninger Clinic. And the Menninger Clinic is a state-of-the-art facility down in Houston, Texas, that deals with mental illness, substance use disorder, sleep apnea, sleep problems, and things like that. These are all things that affect former players. And the NFLPA, thank you, did something positive, and they engaged in a relationship with them. So I go down quarterly to their facility, and every time I'm down there, there will be anywhere from 8 to 12 former players in the facility, and I get to have hands-on experience with them. And that is just so much more purposeful because, there's no one at the league office that has allowed me within 10 feet of a former player or a current player. And, for whatever reason, I'm pretty critical of them, but we have to be. You just can't just acquiesce. You credit them for the good things they do, but when they are exactly who they are, you got to tell them that. And they don't like that. And so those are the things I've been doing with former players. And then I've also been really impactful with The Last Mile. It's a radio show on Sirius XM, but at the forefront of it, it's a foundation that brings educational programs to prisoners in prison. So like 2 weeks ago, I was in San Quentin prison, which was one of the most, was where death row was in California for years and years and years. And now they have a new ward in there, and they have the programming in there. So these programs that we put in there are based around teaching justice-impacted people tools for when they get out. And the two things they are, and it's just not like labor-intensive welding and things like that. They're teaching them coding.
Oh, wow.
How to code. They're teaching them audio-visual production. So these are two things that are incredibly applicable for when they get out, because if people won't hire them because they're a felon or something like that, listen, they now can start their own businesses. This is about content. Everybody's making content. If they know how to do audio and visual production, they're right there. And they could do their own storytelling because they probably have some of the best stories that there are.
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to do and empower them. And then through the process, I've got to interview some amazing people. I had Larry Miller on as a guest the other day. He's the chair and president of Jordan Brand. And his story is wild. You would not believe the story of Larry Miller. Grew up in Philly. 16 years old, was in a gang, shot and killed somebody, went to prison, was in prison for years. But this was before any of the background checks and any of the internet and everything like that. So he goes to work, first off, as the president for the Portland Trail Blazers. He's pretty much going to owners' meetings. Then he's the chair and the head of Jordan Brand. And it turns out some of his story might start to come out. And his daughter's like, you need to tell Phil, and you need to tell Michael. And I'm like, Phil and Michael? And they got Phil Knight and Michael Jordan, like your bosses. He has to go in and tell them the story.
Yeah.
And they believed in him with what he'd done to change his life, and they trusted him. And they said, go write a book. You be the first to tell it. Help people with it. He wrote this book. it's amazing. You know about this. I don't know if I should be just like talking to you straight ahead.
Yeah, I'm on the show too, Ryan.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, my co-host Jason Romano.
Yeah, well, Jason and I know each other from when I started ESPN.
Yes.
And this is where he started. And there was a bigger purpose for him.
Yeah.
And he's left and he built it, and it's special. When you find something that's purposeful in your life, that's the difference. And in a program like this, and it doesn't have to be with anybody or anything, but I travel all around this country and speak, and I'm in different cities all the time. And what I try to do in every city that I go to is that I reach out to the DOC wherever I'm at, and I just say, hey, I'm in town. I don't know if this is possible. I know about clearance and everything like that, and security and stuff like that, but I'd love to come in and talk to the men or the women, depending on if it's a women's or a men's facility, and try to just bring some hope.
Yeah.
And so, as it turns out, as a football player, we're kind of narcissistic in a lot of our things. It's all about us. As it turns out, when you make it about other people, man,
that's right.
Your life gets better. That's what the last 10 years have been for me. I cracked the code, bro, and I'm going to keep doing it.
Amen.
Ryan, I wanted to ask you, because the very first time we met, you'll remember this. I think it was when you wrote your book.
Before I went to prison.
Right. And you came to ESPN and you did like what we called the car wash. Yep. And I took you around all the shows. From that person to when you went through what you went through after, because you're still at that point, you're thinking you cracked the code. Like you're out there and I made it, and I'm turning things around and, sharing your story. And, something took place when you left ESPN that day, if you will, over the next few years.
No. That day, I was trying to sell a book, and I wasn't
2011, right?
And I wasn't ready to. Remember, and I had just had that crazy surgery where a brain tumor was cut out of my head.
Yes.
I was about to go in for radiation and chemo, and there was a lot of fear there, and I had a lot. Even though I may have looked like it during the car wash day, like I was really scared. I was scared of the eyes that were looking at me. I was scared of the judgment, and I was really fearful of. And it happened that day. I went back to my hotel, and I had ordered. I'd like pre-done this the whole way. I knew how I was feeling. I knew that I needed to not feel the way I was feeling. And when I got back to the hotel in Manhattan that day after the car wash, I had pills waiting for me.
Wow.
And I relapsed.
Wow.
And I thought I'd just, I would go through that process, do the radiation in November and December, and then go home and get back to it. And that's just not how it works for me. Like, I'm a junkie. And so I'm not normal. I can't just take them and then it takes over my life.
Yeah.
And that was the start of it, man. And it was. I remember that very clearly. And I look back at it and I just feel like a fraud during that process. So what these last 10 years have been, and I've tried to limit myself in talking about it more or less, and just tried to, one of the things when E60 came to me with the documentary is I made them do a deal that they had to follow me for 18 months. And they don't, Rinaldi doesn't do that.
No, he doesn't.
And when they came back to me and said they would, the reason I gave them was because you just can't come do a puff piece. You got to see me for 18 months and see the evidence behind it, because I could mess up again here in any moment. And if that's the case, I don't want you to tell a false tale. And so, Rinaldi did it, and I saw him at the Senior Bowl a couple days ago, and I mean, my kid hadn't even been born when we were doing the thing, and how much he helped change my life and to tell my story and how it's affected people. And so, I mean, there's a lot of people that carried me these last 10 years for sure.
No, I love that. I love that you shared that so transparently. Our brand, intersection of sports and faith. Yep. Tell me about the importance of faith and the Lord and all of that in your life.
Listen, there was a joke that Sports Illustrated ran the year I was headed to the NFL. It was that what's the difference between God and Ryan Leaf?
Oh, gosh.
The punchline is that God doesn't think he's Ryan Leaf. And I thought it was funny. There's something godlike when you walk into a stadium and you can make 100,000 people. It's absurd, right? There's a lot of things that I look at. I went into a lot of people's houses in Montana, which is per capita the highest population of people that own firearms, that I wasn't shot in somebody's house, that I'm the one still standing here, and Junior Seau, my teammate, is gone. And so I grew up Catholic. Catholicism is really kind of, it's a pressurized kind of religion. And so, I was confirmed, and I was an altar boy, and I did all the things, and I went to Sunday school and stuff. Bottom line is that I know there's a God, and I'm not it. And that's the simplest fashion. Anytime I feel like I don't feel a presence bigger than myself out there, I'll walk into an ocean. I'll go, especially when living in LA, I was walking to the Pacific, and you realize immediately how little you are. You know, and so I do a lot of faith-based stuff with people, and I don't necessarily contribute to any particular religion, but I think that I kind of steal from them all the good parts. You know, I read the Bible from front to back while I was in prison, and you know, I think this is the best way to explain it. The Bible to me is the first self-help book ever written.
Yeah.
You know, I don't look at it as an instruction manual. I look at it as a self-help book that gives you the tools to do the things that you need to do. And the way I read things a lot of times, like, you know, when you're going through a hard time and you're praying for guidance and help, you know, what you thought should have been the response was like an answer, was maybe more of an adverse decision-making moment to deal with it in a healthy, positive way. And I didn't maybe see that when I was younger, when the Chiefs game came after being 2-0 and having everything in my palm of my hands, and God just sending me an absolutely difficult, adverse situation, and I dealt with it in such a poor way. Like, that was my lesson, you know. And sometimes, you know, being faith-based, they're very difficult lessons.
So when you know, we talk about faith-based, and we get, you know, really specific here on Sports Spectrum. We talk about, you know, we name the name of Jesus Christ, and, you know, it gives you controversy if you are, or whatever.
Anytime religion's brought up, everybody's got controversy around.
Of course.
But I wanted to talk about redemption. I mentioned that word earlier, and how you have come from such a different spot, and we're not the culmination of our decisions. You're not the worst
sum
day
of all your parts.
Yeah, you're not the worst thing that you've done as well. We talk about identity and all that stuff, and that goes into professional athletics, especially football. And you think, okay, I failed at this, that's who I am. And people will love to name you. They love to put you in a box and name you that and all that. What is your view on redemption? The whole story of the Bible is a redemption story. So, and you know that, you read the Bible. So what do you think about redemption, and like when it comes to yourself, and then I guess the story that all people need that redemption?
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of times I don't like the word redemption necessarily. You know, I think I was just living life. I think a lot of people just saw it. You know, life's hard. It's not fair. It's about how you deal with it that matters, you know, and I think I just never want to necessarily give it too much of, like, I didn't really do too much. I feel like I've been carried like crazy, you know, whether that's been with, you know, I love the footprints, you know, photo picture,
Mm-hmm.
just the idea when you're the person going through stuff, you're like, look at, this is when it was the hardest, man. And you were nowhere to be found. And Jesus is like, man, that's carrying your butt. Let's, you know, and then you could think about it and you go, you know, that makes sense. And so I'm just hesitant to be about the redemptive part about it. Like, I enjoy the aspect of the life. I got the life of my dreams. So I thought football was going to be the catalyst to give me that. Turns out it wasn't. It turns out being a flawed human being was the way to get the life of my dreams. And so, you know, perspective like that is the golden treasure, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, Ryan, we appreciate your authenticity, and thanks for having.
It's good to see you, man. I was a huge fan of yours, and it's pretty cool sitting next to you, man. So,
yes, sir.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching Sports Spectrum here on YouTube. You can click our next video, or you can check out our website, sportspectrum.com.